the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So the very first thing that we're told is that God formed man from the dust of the ground. Now the word dust is translated from the Hebrew word afar, and it can be used synonymously with clay. And it probably should have been translated as clay because of the context in which it's used. You see, the word formed is translated from the Hebrew word yatsar, and it's used to describe the action of a potter shaping clay into a vessel. Man's creation described in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, is portrayed in terms of God forming clay into the shape of man. But he wasn't alive. He wasn't alive until God breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life. At that point, Adam became a living soul. After God breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life, it says that he became a living soul. Ka'i nefesh in Hebrew. Ka'i meaning living or live, and nefesh meaning soul. Now here's what's interesting. Both man and animals are considered to be living souls. So you'll see these two words used together to also describe animals. Ka'i nefesh. But man is different in one regard. God blew into man's nostrils the breath of life. In other words, man's gift of life was given by God himself. It was his life that God blew into man. And God's life possesses immortality. So God blew his life, which possesses the characteristic of immortality, into man. And in doing so, his immortality was passed on to man. Therefore, man's soul, nefesh, possesses immortality, or so the rabbis taught. Now, here's why they taught that. God did not do this when he created animals. Only in man does it say that God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, making man somewhat distinct from the animal kingdom in that man is eternal and animals are not eternal. Let me read that again. Only in man does it say that God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, making man somewhat distinct from the animal kingdom in that man is eternal and animals are not eternal. Now, as I said, animals also possess a soul. They can think, they have a will, and they have emotions. The soul consists of the intellect, the will, and the emotions. Well, if you have an animal that's a pet, you know, how many of you have dogs? You know that they have intellect. Some dogs are smarter than other dogs. Some dogs are just extremely smart. Other dogs are mentally challenged. I've seen most of your dogs. No, I'm just teasing. Animal souls, they're different. Animals possess a soul, but their soul is not immortal because God did not breathe into their nostrils the breath of life. He only did that with man. He created them with breath, but he spoke breath into them. He didn't breathe into them. Therefore, he didn't pass immortality onto them. I'm asked all the time, my dog passed away. Will he be in heaven? No, I'm sorry. I crushed Drew's heart one day. One of his dogs had died. He was talking. I said, Drew, they don't have an immortal soul. And my wife chastised me for a week. There will be animals in heaven. There are creatures if you study the Bible. But you need to understand, man is distinct from animal in that they have a soul, but it's not immortal. Here's the problem with all these groups that don't believe in the doctrine of the soul, human soul being immortal. They don't make a distinction between man and animals, and the Bible does. You are not an animal. You are made in the image of God, and God himself breathed into Adam. And he passed his life on to Adam. Therefore, when Adam sinned, here's the most interesting thing. It brought forth death to a soul that's immortal. So Jesus comes along and he says, neither will you die anymore, because we're in this state where people die. But when you pass into the afterlife, the soul is there and it's immortal. That's why to the Jew, death is nothing but separation. It's physical death, it's separation of the soul from the body. The body goes in the ground, the soul and the spirit returns to the Lord who gave it. Now, because God's omnipresent doesn't mean that all souls go to heaven, because God is everywhere. Revelation chapter 10 tells us he's even in hell. So when it returns to God, if the soul didn't believe in Jesus Christ, it's immortal. It goes to hell to await its resurrection, which we're going to see the next time I teach. All of the scriptures in the Bible teach that man's soul is immortal.